Hello, everyone. Welcome to our podcast. Right now, the name is a work in progress. Right now, we're set on Derrick with a chance, a Derrick with a chance of podcast. I'm Derrick, and this is Chance. Say hello, Chance.
Hello.
And this is our podcast where we talk about movies. And today's topic is we're going to be talking about some of our favorite movies. Three of my favorite movies, three of Chance's favorite movies, and we'll just kind of be talking about it. And if you like it, comment below. Alrighty. Chance, would you like to start us off with your first movies?
My first movie is, of course, the major ocean picture, Surf's Up. One of the greatest films of all time, if not the greatest. Star-studded cast, great story, tight hour and a half. It's an easy watch. It's a animated movie about surfing penguins. I mean, what more could you want? Again, it's got a fantastic cast, fantastic voice acting, great for all ages.
Yes, and when we're talking about the greatest pieces of film of all time, Chance is not joking. Surf's Up is probably one of his favorite movies. Is it your favorite?
It
Number
is
one?
definitively my favorite movie. I've probably watched it over 200 times.
Yeah,
Easily.
Yeah, I have never seen someone talk about something as disappointed as when Surf's Up 2 came out because he did not like it. But
I
yes,
stayed
this
up.
is
Yeah, I stayed up all night that day, and I as soon as Walmart opened, this is back when they were open 24 hours. As soon as they opened, I went there and I bought Surf's Up 2 and drove home and watched it that night. And it was probably one of the worst days of my entire life.
and he's a WrestleMania fan too. So to combine probably two of his favorite things, you would think that'd be a recipe for success, but he actually hated it.
Yes, John Cena is probably one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. I also love The Undertaker. So I thought, it was a recipe for greatness, but it was something horrible. A
So,
travesty, an abomination, to say the least.
so what makes what some would call probably a children's movie one of your favorite, and what do you think makes it great?
I
Because it is
think
just a movie about surfing
I think
penguins.
when you say children's movie, I think I think that in itself is something that makes it great because it is something that can be enjoyed by all audiences. I think when you talk about some of the greatest movies of all time, you got your Shawshanks, you got your you got your Godfathers, you got your Usual Suspects, you got your all of those. But when I think greatest movies of all time, I think Surf's Up. I think Into the Spider-Verse. I think Across the Spider-Verse. I think Shrek. I think Shrek 2. I think the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy. I think the Kung Fu Panda trilogy. Something that everybody can get something from. Something everybody can sit down and watch and have a good time with.
I like that. I do have some questions for you about how it's portrayed as a kids movie, but I'll get to that in a second. My first question about Surf's Up for you, as someone who's probably the biggest fan. First of all, let me give my opinion of Surf's Up. I do think Surf's Up is a fantastic movie. I think it's amazing that to have such a star-studded cast and what's seen as a children's movie, it's just kind of rare to have actors, Jeff Bridges, Shia LaBeouf, Zooey Deschanel, just to have them in a movie that is really a big success for no reason. I mean, it's literally about surfing penguins, and everyone was kind of on board, like, oh yeah, this is going to be a fantastic movie. Soundtrack's great, the way that it's filmed is great, the whole story's great. I love it. But one of my questions to you, and as far as greatest movies of all time, I am not ranking it nearly as high as Chances. Now, when it comes to animated movies or probably children's movies because it is classified as that, I would give it, much higher on the list as what it probably would end up being if you just took like a poll. But as far as greatest of all time, I'm not putting up there with Shawshank or any of those.
It's better, man. It's better. It's I mean, the way I see it is those movies, those kind of greatest of all time movies. You look up greatest movies of all time, you're gonna see the same 50 on every single list. Those movies, I have to be in a very certain headspace to sit down and watch.
That is true.
Yeah. I have to be like, okay, let me plan out my week, get my calendar out, and say, okay, on Friday I'm gonna watch Shawshank Redemption. If I walk into a room and Surf's Up on the TV, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm sitting down and I'm watching. It's very much like SpongeBob in a way, you know? Like I will be
Okay. Yes.
whenever I can, whenever there's an episode of SpongeBob on, I'm sat and I'm watching. It doesn't matter if I was 5 years old or I'm 25 years old or I'm 50 years old, because at every age, I think there's something you can pull from it. We know when you're a kid, you can relate towards, the SpongeBob and Patrick's, but then as you get older, you can relate to maybe the Squidward or the Mr. Krabs. I think Surf's Up and many other, kids movies are the exact same way. Every time you watch it, you can kind of pull from a different character, pull from a different storyline, which makes it something that you sit down and watch. You don't have to be in like a certain headspace. You don't have to prepare for it. You don't have to mentally or emotionally prepare to sit down and watch something like a movie like Surf's Up or Kung Fu Panda or How to Train Your Dragon or anything like that.
So, in your opinion, one of my questions is they choose to go about it in a very certain way where they film, if you haven't seen it, I'm
It's a
not even going to bother
documentary.
with an old movie.
It actually
It's
happened.
documentary style.
Yeah, they found talking
It did not
penguins
actually happen.
in
No,
Antarctica.
it did not happen.
Tengu.
But it is shot as a documentary
Yeah, because
style.
it actually happened.
His name's Cody, I believe, the penguin, who gets
Cody
an opportunity
Beverly.
of a lifetime to surf in a big competition. But why do you think they chose a documentary style? Because it is so rare for anything like that to be done, especially for a children's movie. Of course, some people don't consider it that way. You don't, but it is still a strange choice for an animated movie, especially one about surfing penguins. So why do you think they kind of went with that style?
It's definitely a style that makes the characters feel more alive. Um, the dialogue, I praise the dialogue a lot in the movie because it feels so natural, and it feels so natural because of the way the movie is shot. It doesn't feel like they're obviously, it's a movie, they're obviously reading off a script, but it doesn't come across that way because it's shot in this documentary format where everything feels very natural, and it's not something that like they stick to. It's they kind of play it like The Office, where they got the talking heads, and you got cameramen hiding in bushes and recording them when they don't know it, and then you have some other scenes where it's easy to tell that they've kind of not gone with that documentary style, because maybe it's a scene with Cody and Lonnie. If you watch the movie, where they're in a cave just hanging out, and it's very clear there's not a camera crew there watching them. But it's shot in a way where you don't really notice that, and that makes the other scenes where they bring out these talking heads more natural, and it makes the characters feel more real and allows you to connect to them a lot easier, because there is that kind of illusion of these are real characters.
I do like that, and we will come around to very similar when we get to your second movie. I won't say what it is, but first we will talk about my first movie that is my favorite of all time. I've seen it probably more than any other movie, and it is a movie that you would expect to hear on a movie podcast. Not Surf's Up as the first movie that we ever talk about on a podcast, but my favorite movie of all time is Whiplash. I think Whiplash is a perfect movie, start to end. If you haven't seen it, very vulgar. That is a good way to describe it, but it's essentially about a drummer who is chasing greatness, who's being pushed to it by a band director, or a jazz band director, that is abusive verbally, mentally, emotionally, any lead that you can think of. And I think it is a fantastic movie. I think it is shot cinematically. I think it's great. I think it's Damien Chazelle's best work as a director, even better than La La Land, which I know a lot of people would disagree with, because a
That
lot
I
of people love
disagree
La La
with.
Land. Chance loves La
That
La
I
Land.
disagree with.
That was on his list of movies he might choose as his favorite, but I love Whiplash more than any of his works. I think Miles Teller does an amazing job. I think J.K. Simmons is an amazing actor. I think he's getting a lot more recognition now through some of the works that he's doing with Invincible and other things, but he's a great voice actor. He's always been a great voice actor, but this is a chance that he has to display how great of an actor he is in live action film, and so it is without a doubt my favorite movie.
I like it. What about that movie makes it your number one? Is there anything specifically that puts it over everything else? There's a lot of movies out there. To say one movie is your favorite of all time is something big.
So it's funny. I am a huge fan of action film, and you'll see that by my other two choices. But with this film in particular, there's not any real sort of action that you would see in modern uh, film. But I think I'm very drawn to the story, how it's told, of how these characters are represented, how they're shown, how they're being manipulated by the band instructor, how he, treats people that he sees as below them, or how he wants to push his status quo, what he wants to be done, how he manipulates people. And I think it is just fantastic storytelling in the most beautiful way possible. And I'm also a big fan of different types of music. I love all types of music. So to hear different pieces of jazz, which is not the most popular type of music, to be put into a story that's so edge of your seat, so what's going to happen next, is just really cool to be able to see. But when it comes to Whiplash, you obviously don't see it as Damien Chazelle's best work. How do you place it on your tier list, I guess, of film?
I think it's definitely one of his best. I just don't think it's better than La La Land. I think
And is that shortcomings on Whiplash's side, or is it just because of how great La
I
La
think it's
Land
just because of how great Whiplash. Oh, not Whiplash. I think it's because of how great La La Land is. I mean, I don't have him on my list, but another one of my favorite directors is if he was
Wes
my
Anderson?
favorite, Wes Anderson. If he's my favorite, I wouldn't blank on his name. But Wes Anderson, and just the way he uses kind of every medium when it comes to making a
That's true.
film. And I feel like La La Land is one where Damien uses everything, and from color to dialogue to filmography to shots to angles to he kind of uses everything in the wheelhouse that you can use to make a film better, and especially color. Color plays a huge role in La La Land, and that's not something that you don't really see in Whiplash. Like it's kind of a dark and kind of
Well,
gloomy movie in a way, and you don't really get a lot of opportunities, or he doesn't really use a whole lot of those other things to kind of bring that film to another level. Is just the way
okay,
I
okay.
see it.
This is where I'll disagree with you. When I see Whiplash, there is the colors that he uses mainly for the over, you know, the almost the entirety of the movie is orange, and then he does some green as well for certain scenes. And one thing that he also utilizes, it's all in the small details with him, is fashion. Whenever you see also, another funny thing, his name is Andrew Neiman in the movie. That is his actual name. And the first detail of this type of emotional abuse that he puts on his students is he calls him Neiman. His real name is Neiman, but throughout the entire film, if you were to ask anyone, they would say his name is Andrew Neiman because he calls him that 24/7. He calls him by Neiman, but it just goes to show how he tries to break them down and build them back up. And it's in those little details that I think it makes the movie so great. So, anyways, in the very first opening scene, he's wearing a white T-shirt. As the movie progresses along, he slowly starts to wear grays and kind of darker colors. And at the very end of the movie, he's seen in a black suit, just like the director is throughout the whole film, black. And you just kind of see his transition into what other people would see as, unhealthy obsession, which it is, but also him becoming great, which again, Damien Chazelle does an amazing job at focusing on small details and making it mean so much more in the entirety of the film. But that is my favorite movie. That is something that you would be more likely to see on a movie podcast. But another movie that you would not be likely to see is Chance's second favorite movie, which I will go ahead and pick yours for you because I have some questions about it that kind of relate to Surf's Up. So tell me about Holes.
Holes, another Shia LaBeouf classic. If you can't
I was
tell,
going to ask you if they had to if it had to do with Shia LaBeouf, if that was a
not.
big
I mean,
reason.
it was just kind of just a coincidence.
Okay, but the other movie on your list was Peanut Butter Falcon, which also
Yes, I'm a big Shia LaBeouf fan. I have been since I was very young. Just kind of like I grew up watching Even Stevens, and then that kind of led into Surf's Up. That kind of led into Holes, but also Holes is just another fantastic movie. Very similar to Surf's Up, enjoyable by all ages. It also has another one of my favorite actors that I don't really see a ton, Dule Hill from Psych fame. I quote him a lot. I can fix that. I can fix that. And kissing Kate Barlow. I mean, I just love the way Holes is kind of the story is told in kind of two separate timelines, and just the way they connect, with Kiss and Kate Barlow, with Madame Zeroni, and then you go kind of into the modern day with Stanley Yelnats and Zero, and kind of just the way those two stories intertwine is such a wonderful kind of narrative, and just I tried to read the book, but I'm not a great reader, so I couldn't really get through it. But I watched the movie tons of times, loved it every single time. It's something that's so quotable, and it's a movie that again is just kind of so genuine, very much like Surf's Up, very enjoyable by all ages, and it's a great story, kind of in both in the past and the current, with Stanley Yelnats and Kiss and Kate Barlow and Madame Zeroni and all that.
Okay, so let me ask you this question I saved for Holes because it too is seen as a kids movie. Okay, now let's talk about some of the notorious points of the plot. Okay, there is a child who is a runaway from home, pretty much a delinquent, which is why he is sent to a juvenile correction camp where he is seduced to child labor by digging holes
You gotta
for
dig them
a
holes.
abusive camp leader. Then you have the second narrative that you say of Kissing Kate Barlow, where it's, the way that she becomes that is by, interracial dating, and he ends up being shot over it.
Mm.
And then I had actually forgotten the Madame Zeroni narrative, but
She gets
again,
cursed.
yeah, curse,
It's a
curse
curse. There's a
forever.
curse on the Yelnats family because his stinking great grandfather didn't carry Madame Zeroni up the mountain.
Okay. But with these very, very adult topics that it comes across in these movies, and why do you think this too is seen as a kids movie and not a film, which, the plot points would kind of suggest?
I think it's just kind of it's always hard to. There is a lot of nuance to it, but I think it's kind of an overall problem of when your main character is a kid or a teenager, it kind of automatically falls into kids movie. And I think Holes is an example of that. It shouldn't really be characterized as a kids movie because it deals with some heavy topics, like you said. But like I said, because that's your main character is a child, a teenager, it kind of just falls into that. Oh, this is it focuses on a teenager, so kids and teenagers watch this movie. It's not an
Mhm.
adult movie, but I just think that's kind of like a very narrow way of looking at it, and it is very similar to Surf's Up, and in a case where everybody can enjoy it, and depending on different ages you watch it, you pull different things from it, and that makes it rewatchable in a way, because you watch it once and you watch it a couple weeks later, and maybe you pull a different thing from it, you relate to a different character, and it's very interesting, and that's why it's one of my favorites, because of that kind of duality of it.
Mhm. I think, in my opinion, it is probably one of Disney's best movies that they've made.
Easily.
I like, as far as the ones that kind of come out through that same way that they did that High School
Mm.
Musical, different things like that. Because I do love the different narratives that it pulls together. I do think that it's full of great child actors. They really do a good job of getting across what's happening. You're very engaged. You're never, although some of the stuff might be seem more geared towards children. You never seem disengaged, as if like, oh, okay, this is obviously a movie, not real life. You're always kind of there, like, oh,
Hmm.
this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. So I do really enjoy Holes. I think it's great. Again, not on my tier of best movies,
It
but I
should
do think
be.
it. Oh, you give me Disney movies, yes, I'll put it up there on the S tier. But my second of it is, where do you think Disney has gone wrong with these movies? Because this is probably considered a easily S tier, along with High School Musical, some of the other Disney movies that are really good. But
Mm.
now, when movies get made, they are so bad. And maybe you disagree, maybe you think they're really good, but I think that they have just gone down in quality. Why do you think that is?
I think it's kind of the same problem that Marvel's having, where it's kind of turned into a quantity over quality thing. And there are some diamonds in the rough there. It's just those diamonds in the rough. I don't think because maybe they're making so many movies, they're spending money on so many things, they don't put enough money behind the marketing, because movies like Encanto and movies like Elemental were both really good, but they didn't really get the marketing and people didn't really go out and see them because of that. And I think a lot of problem,
Encanto
and kind of leads
is
into it,
amazing.
is streaming platforms. People,
Mhm.
don't really want to go out and watch a movie when it's like, oh, it's going to be on Disney Plus in a couple of months. I'll just watch it on there. I already pay for it. So it's kind of a thing of it's a dual thing of quantity over quality, and then the movies they do put out, they're not marketing, and then people don't go see them because they don't really know they're out there. So
So
it's a bunch of things.
yeah, the going to my second favorite movie, going away from the holes. This is not one that you would probably see on many people's favorite list. I deviate away from the greatest, the greatest hits, you might say. But my second favorite movie is Ip Man, which is a Korean film, which is so freaking good. I would recommend this movie to anyone, regardless of if you've ever watched a foreign film or not. Watch it with the English dub over. Their mouth may not line up, but it is still such a good movie. I think it is so well told. It is one of the few action movies that you'll see come out of Korean film that has amazing dialogue. One of the reasons for that is because it's kind of historically based on things that have actually happened, and also because Donnie Yen is the star of it, a kind of legend from those type of movies, and has one of my all-time favorite fight scenes in it. He fights 10 men at once for a bag of rice, and it is fantastic. I watch all kinds of action movies. I watch choreography, reactions of choreography, and this 100% takes the cake on my favorite fight scene. The Raid comes close when I think of movies in this kind of genre, but Ip Man stands alone when it comes to storytelling overall and very cool hand-to-hand combat scenes. Um, Chance, how does this rank on your foreign film?
I find it very interesting that you said that this would not make a best movies list, because I very much disagree. I This is one of the greatest movies ever made. Ip Man is incredible. Derek said that to watch it on English subtitles. I disagree with that. Watch it, watch it with subtitles. Read the little words at the
Learn
bottom.
Korean, then read
It's
it, then watch how
important.
it
It's
gets made.
important to watch it how it was made. Okay, don't watch the sub, or don't watch
Watch
the
the
dub.
stuff.
Watch the
Watch
sub.
the stuff.
But definitely, if you don't really watch a lot of foreign films, give this one a chance. The action alone kind of carries it,
Mhm.
and it's incredible to watch. He talked about the scene where he fights 10 black belts, and even there's a scene at the very beginning where he's like sparring with somebody, and that scene's incredible. And it's a while they do kind of decrease, It Man is actually a trilogy, and every single movie is actually pretty good.
I think
And
there's like five of them now. I think there's
is there?
five.
I
Yeah,
know when I watched it was a trilogy, and in the third one he fights Mike Tyson.
that is
I
true. Yeah.
remember that distinctly. But there's a lot. There's a ton of. Honestly, I think here in America we fall short on a lot of fight scenes. I think if you're looking for good fight scenes, you go overseas. You go foreign films, stuff like Ip Man, stuff like Ong Bak, stuff like Old Boy. Those movies are incredible and have fantastic fight scenes that you don't really see a lot here.
It gets very lazy with editing. A lot of people like to try to edit together a fight scene where you'll
Hmm.
see one punch here and
Yeah,
then it'll
way
just
too
cut
many
to where
cuts.
contact's already being made. And it's
Hmm.
kind of hard. You'll get lost in the action, not knowing what's actually happening. And really, it's just rushing in the editing room, people trying to meet deadlines, and they're not able to give the highest quality that they could.
Hmm.
Or you have someone on set filming that may not know what they're doing, and so it's hard to get all the correct angles. So then, once those people are in the editing room, they don't have all the footage they need to make a coherent fight scene.
Yeah,
And
there's a ton of
that's a
different
problem.
factors that play into it. Some actors like to do their own stunts, and maybe too coordinated, for their own good. Because Donnie Yen, he's such a good, stunt man, and such a good fighter, that a lot of that stuff kind of comes natural to them, and a lot of his fight scenes are actually improvised in a
Mhm.
way, which makes it feel so much more natural, and look so much better than a lot of the overly coordinated stuff we see nowadays.
Yeah, when you get to American film, you have some that do it right, first one that comes to mind is Nobody. I'm a
Hmm.
big fan of that movie. That's very recent. Didn't get as much probably attention as I think it should have. Of course, movies like John Wick, which we'll talk about in a minute, uh, really do it well. But for the most part, I do think you're right that it's just kind of overlooked in a way. But Chance, going over to your last movie, your third favorite movie, you have chosen one that I guarantee is not on the top
It
100
should be.
movies of all.
All the movies I
It
picked
should
should be
not.
on. They should be. If there was a top three list of the best movies, these three should be on all of them.
That is not accurate. But go ahead and tell them what. I'll say what I think about this movie. Okay, this his third favorite movie is Pacific Rim. It is about monsters who essentially come up from the earth in order, attack on different cities overall. And humans have to find a way to defend themselves, and they invent what are called Jaegers, which are giant robots to fight the monsters. And it is epic. It is a
Hmm.
great movie. I will say, out of all monster movies, these are my favorite, without a doubt. I've seen all the Godzilla and whatever. This
It's
one,
fantastic because you have a director that knows what he's doing, in Guillermo
who
del
likes that?
Toro.
I don't even know.
Guillermo del Toro, man.
Really?
I mean,
I
that's why it's so good, because you have somebody who understands monsters. You have somebody who understands kind of what makes them so great, what makes kaijus so great, and what more could you want? It's robots versus aliens, robots versus monsters.
I would have
That's the greatest
never
thing
guessed
ever.
Del Toro. That is actually such a throw
And
for me.
this is a very similar situation to Surfs Up, where I was very excited for the sequel, Pacific Rim 2 Uprising. And the day I saw it in theaters was one of the worst days of my life because that movie was terrible.
Not as much of a letdown as Surf's Up, but
Surfs Up
yes.
2 Wave Mania is way worse than Pacific Rim 2 Uprising. I will say that. Pacific Rim 2 has some decent ideas with Obsidian Fury that I could kind of get behind. But the reason Pacific Rim 1 is so great is because Guillermo del Toro understood weight. The
Yes,
Jaegers
that is true.
and the kaijus were moved so slow, and every punch had so much of an impact. There was so much weight behind everything. It felt so real. While in the second movie, it's more like a Power Rangers ripoff, because you have these giant robots running faster than Usain Bolt,
Yeah.
doing jump kicks and scissor kicks and Pele kicks, and there's no weight behind it, so it doesn't feel real. There's no immersion there. While in Pacific Rim 2, Pacific Rim 1, you have that, and just the human connection in that is so real too,
Okay, and
and
that's
everybody's
actually
so
what I want.
believable.
That's what I want to talk to you about. Okay,
Hmm.
so I think that 9 out of 10 monster movies. I'm not a big fan of monster movies, and I think 9 out of 10 go wrong in how they portray humans. Okay, because of course
I
monster
100%
movies
agree.
never
That's a big
focus.
reason big flaw the new
Yes,
Godzilla movies have with the human
yes.
connection. They fail in just so many ways.
And is where I'm going. Of course, the movie doesn't actually focus on the monster, which honestly it may make for a better movie if they did. They focus on, instead of humans kind of dealing with the monsters either as they're fighting or, finding ways to overcome it. What do you think Pacific, and I have an answer for this. I'm excited to kind of see as
Hmm.
far as matchup is, what do you think separates Pacific Rim that makes the people in it so much different from those that you would see in movies like Godzilla or, any of the ones that portray humans wrong or unable to be related with?
I think it's they make the people important. I think if you had any other robot versus monster movie, it would be just that. It would be a robot versus a monster. But in Pacific Rim, you make the people part of the robots. You make the people imperative to the story. You have to have two people linking themselves to control this robot. It's so big. And by having this system saying this is how you have to pilot these robots, you have to use two people to pilot Jaegers, it makes the people important. Well, in a Godzilla movie, and I feel like not all Godzilla movies do this, especially the most recent example, Godzilla -1, almost made this list, actually, because it's so good and it has that human connection. Because, again, it makes the humans important instead of just kind of a side character.
Hmm.
Where the new Godzilla movies, Godzilla versus Kong, Godzilla King of all monsters, Kong in a way, like the characters feel more like side pieces. Like if this movie was Godzilla 100% of the time, it costs way too much money. So Godzilla's going to be in here for 25 minutes, and then we're going to just make something up with the people, so we don't have to spend as much money. And they don't feel important, they don't feel impactful, and they don't feel real because they make stupid decisions, and they talk weird. The dialogue is off. But in Pacific Rim and Godzilla minus one, everybody feels real in a way.
And I'll add an interesting tidbit about this because I think honestly, you can even still have a good movie if your characters aren't important. The most famous example I can think of is Indiana Jones. I can't remember which one. Where they open the Ark of the Covenant. That's not Temple of Doom? I can't remember. It is one of the Indiana Jones movies.
It's
Anyway,
I don't know. I don't remember actually.
okay, so basically in the movie Indiana Jones, the Nazis are trying to take the Ark of the Covenant and
Mm.
open it. And
It's Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, isn't it?
no. That's way after. That's the really bad
That's the
one.
one with
This one's
Shia LaBeouf.
yes.
Yeah.
The one that I'm thinking of, it is like one of the most famous ones that
Hmm.
everybody loves it. Anyways, the everyone loves it. Nobody ever thinks about it. In the end, the Nazis open it, and they're like, whatever. They all die, and then Indiana Jones survives. Everybody wins. Yeah, everybody's happy. But then some people notice afterwards, they're like, if you take Indiana Jones out of that movie, nothing would change because his whole goal in the movie is to stop the Nazis from getting and opening the Ark of the Covenant. In the end, they finally get it and they open it. It just so happens to kill everyone there. And it's like, okay, like nothing's changed. Like the main character actually did nothing. Like he accomplished zero. And yeah, it's still a great movie.
Hmm.
But I just find that interesting. The reason that I said that most monster movies fall short and Pacific Rim doesn't, what it does opposite, is that it humans are so ineffective in monster movies that they are literally ants. I mean, what I love about Pacific Rim is that it gives them a fighting chance. It accepts the fact that okay, this is a fictional movie. We have monsters in it. Let's embrace that a little bit. They give humans the ability to fight back against the aliens, while in other monster movies, it's like watching the really cool fight, but you're from the perspective of the ants.
Hmm.
Like Godzilla, hey, we're doing all we can, but honestly, against Godzilla, we're not actually doing anything. Like we have no effect. He's going to fight this Hydra, and, they're going to have it all out. And we're just kind of going to sit back and watch and have our own little story that doesn't even really matter. So I really like the Pacific Rim kind of embraces their identity as a monster movie. Like, hey, yeah, it's not going to be the most realistic thing in the world, but we have a 20-ton robot that these humans are in charge of because we can actually fight back against
Hmm.
this threat. So that is something that I think that makes it so much better than all other monster movies.
Yeah, that definitely ties into what I was saying. Like you make the people important. In Godzilla, like you were saying, the people are not important. The people are cannon fodder, really,
Yeah.
and because they have nothing to fight back with. I mean, we see tanks don't work. We see missiles don't work. The only thing that they can do is go and get King Kong to fight Godzilla. And even then, I mean, it doesn't really work. I mean, in the second movie, in King of All Monsters,
Yeah.
Mothra and Ghidorah, they show up and they fight them, but the humans didn't do anything there. Like,
Yeah, the whole thing was like, oh, hey, we're going to control Mothra by talking to her. And it's like, oh,
yeah,
wait, yeah, Mothra's gone. Like,
yeah,
and it's,
and then in Godzilla versus Kong, you have Mecha Godzilla, but even then, it doesn't really feel impactful because you don't really see it. Mecha Godzilla is played as a villain, so you don't really have that connection to him. It feels weird, and Godzilla and King Kong just team up to kill Mecha Godzilla, so it's like that doesn't he barely gets any screen time. It doesn't feel believable. You don't have any reason to attach yourself to the human behind Mecha Godzilla, so it's
mhm.
very weird. And like you said, I mean, they just kind of minimize humans in those movies to more cannon fodder and more ants for Godzilla to kill.
Yeah. And finally, my last movie is again another action movie, but and probably one of the most kind of overplayed as, best action revenge thriller, even though there have been some before, is John Wick. John Wick is my favorite series. If I have to pick a favorite, honestly, I'm going to say John Wick 3, Parabellum. But I picked John Wick 1 just because easier to talk about. Really, it's all the same story. I mean, every movie picks up where the last leaves off. And so, really, cheating a little bit, but I'm going to just say John Wick as a whole. The movie follows, of course, John, who has just lost his wife, and how through a series of events ends up back in the assassin's world that he had left behind. And each movie just goes from one cause to another effect, and how he's sucked back into the world and how it plays out. And it is fantastic. It really gave fire to all those movies that kind of copycatted movies like Nobody, movie 100 others of people like, hey, we're going, I was done wrong. I'm going to go way overboard and take out everyone that was even remotely involved. And between the action, the dedication of Keanu Reeves, the director, who is actually he was a stuntman beforehand, so he was really on hands on with the action and filming it, and just made the movie look amazing. Uses bright colors throughout the rest of, not really as much in the first movie, but in the second, third, and fourth movie, it's just beautiful, all the cinematography. And I think it is probably it is the best action film of all time.
Interesting.
Do you agree with my assessment of the? And I know it's hard choosing, 1, 2, 3, or 4, but how would it rank for you on your action films?
I like John Wick 1, but John Wick 3 is probably my favorite. If I
That's
had to
what I
pick
said.
one, yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I think John Wick 3 is my favorite out of all of them. But the question I want to ask you on John Wick is, because I think getting into it through Allure for me was kind of the criminal underground, the underbelly, and how everything worked behind the scenes. And I think what made the movie so great was they didn't really tell you. It was more of a mystery. Do you think as the movies have gone on, they've shown more and more? Do you think that's a good or a bad decision? Do you think it's kind of taken away from the allure of everything going on behind the scenes, or do you like that we're kind of getting a peek behind the curtains and finding out more?
I think that this is a fantastic question, because one of the things that makes John Wick great is, look at how they introduce John Wick. Look at how we get to understand why everyone's so afraid of him. It doesn't show him killing 30 men. Now, he does do that later, but it doesn't show that at first. It doesn't show any flashbacks of how he was back in the day. It doesn't show any training montage. No. It is the villain talking to his son about how they used to hire him, and it is all done through dialogue. It doesn't show a single action scene, but we're grown to have respect for John Wick, to be afraid of John Wick, to truly see the fear in his son's eyes when he realizes the wrong that he has done. He's killed 3 men with a pencil, and he's dedication and willpower, things you know nothing about. The That actor deserves a ton of credit for the reputation that he builds for John Wick without showing anything, strictly through dialogue. And I think it is amazing how they do that. And so when it comes to the world building, they do a lot of the same. They show you sneak peeks, like when he goes to the Continental, he slides a coin across. What is this coin? Why does it, have so much weight in this universe? What, the Continental grounds, why is it so important? We're given tidbits here and there, and it's just leaves us wanting more. And it built up the world beautifully, because it's not a world where you have to, like Dune, where you have to show everything. You have to show all the houses, how they interact with each other, what they're all competing for. No, you only have to leave tidbits behind, because that's exactly what it is. It's an assassin's world. It's the underbelly. It's things you're not supposed to see. And so as the movies go on, yes, they do reveal more of the world, and it loses that grandeur, that mystery of what you're looking for. So as to whether or not it's a good or a bad thing, I honestly think it's a bad thing. I love to see it because once you see it, you're like, oh gosh, that's right. Well, okay. They do it better in some movies than they do the other. When you get to I believe it's the third movie where he goes back to the Roscaroma. Is
Mhm.
that the third? And he goes back home, and you get to see kind of a little bit more of his origins, but it doesn't tell what it was like when he was there. It kind of shows you more a little bit on the other side, but it doesn't show you the other. And I love that it does that. But then once you get into the fourth movie, it shows you some of the other continentals, how they play out. You see uh, the one who sits above the high table. One thing that I didn't like is I wish they would have made the high table a more mysterious figure than just people from around the world, and then the one above is just some
Mhm.
guy sitting out in the desert. I wish they would have left more mystery in that than just revealing that you go wandering in a desert and they'll just pick you up on a camel and bring you to them.
Yeah.
So there were some parts that I think that they did better than others, but I do think that losing some of that mystery is not good for the franchise, especially if you plan on doing more, which they
Mhm.
obviously do because of the crazy success of the franchise.
Mhm.
But yes,
Even with spinoff shows like The Continental, I mean, I haven't watched it yet, but just
I've watched it.
having that exist kind of takes away the allure and like the grandeur of your set of the whole universe. Giving us that peek behind the curtain, you know, maybe gives us a reason not to sit down for the next show. Um,
Mhm.
be, because we know too much in a way.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I mean, it's a problem that a lot of franchises struggle with.
Hmm.
There are certain ways around it. Fast and Furious just, of course, goes more and more. They've sort of accepted the fact that they're going to be ridiculous and they just keep building on top of it. So they find ways around it. Other big franchises, like you mentioned, Marvel earlier before, running into the same problem where they kind of revealed so much and introduced so many new characters. They have no idea what to do right now.
Yeah.
They have one idea and 20 bust, all quantity over quality, and they've just kind of lost what made it so great. And it was the world building of different characters doing their own thing, and then after such a long period of time coming together, while the characters that are introduced now all have movies before where we've seen them and we kind of already have opinions about them. They can't be reestablished in a new
Hmm.
movie for them. So it's a two-edged sword. Yes, you want to see more, but seeing more often leads to a not as positive of a result as you want.
Hmm. It's definitely a hard line to walk. And I think one show that does it really well is The Boys. Actually, every season we kind of see more and more, but every time we see more, it just ups the stakes. And there's always something else around the corner. But I think it also has the issue of the more we see, the less threatening characters become in a way. Like if you look back, have you watched The Boys?
Although I have not seen season four, so the most recent one, but I've seen up to
Mm-hmm.
one,
I
two,
mean,
three, and I watched Gen V.
I think all the seasons are great, but one thing I will admit is over the seasons, Homelander kind of loses that aura, that intimidating presence. In season one, it's like Homelander is so scary. We don't want our main characters to go anywhere near him. Well, you fast forward to season three, and they're having stare downs with him almost every single episode. And
Yeah.
that kind of fear, that kind of stress of just having Homelander on screen is gone because oh, our characters are gonna be fine. They're gonna be in the same room with them and insult them, maybe even hit them, and they're gonna walk out just fine. So it's kind of weird to what line do you want to walk?
I do understand. That is a very good point. The only thing that I see as a redeeming point for that keeps Homelander kind of intimidating figure is that he's slowly losing his sanity.
Mm-hmm.
And because he's so desperate, really the only thing that keeps Homelander in check is his desire to be approved by the masses.
Yeah.
And into season three, he lost it. I mean,
Mm-hmm. Season four has
I
been
won't
great, by the
spoil it.
way. If you need to
I'm trying to
start
watch.
watching it.
I was gonna watch an episode tonight, but he's kind of descending where he's pushing the line of, I'm going to do whatever I want regardless of what people think.
Mm-hmm.
But he's going crazier and crazier. He's getting more and more power
Yeah.
by there's no more people over him to kind of tell him what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, he has no idea what to do. He has things that are happening in his life, and really he's holding on by a thread to what he wants. And if he loses that, then there's nothing keeping him from being, a world ender, which I
Mm-hmm.
think that's really redeemable for. Yes, you're right. It is strange that some of the weaker characters are able to stand up to him in such a way, but I think that there are parts of the show that kind of make up for that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, we have gone through our 3 movies, and I believe this would probably be a good spot to end our very first episode introducing our first movies. And who knows what we'll talk about next time? I have some topics we may go into, and maybe we'll go into some more movies that we didn't get a chance to talk about today, or maybe we'll just change the topic entirely and talk about Surf's Up the entire time, because I know that's what Chance would love.
I would love that. If you guys, if people watching here haven't seen any of the movies that we mentioned today, go out and watch them as soon as you get a chance, and then come back here and tell us what you thought.
Yes, we've given you great action movies, great films overall, some great children's movies, quote unquote, for chances that are all worth a watch. All these movies are 100% worth a watch. So is The Boys. Go out and give it a watch, especially if you're wanting to see something within the genre that we've spoken about. But for now, that has been Derek with a Chance of Podcast, and we will see you guys next time.
Indeed. Looking forward to it.